thank you for joining us once again for this roundtable on closing the skills gap. My name is Dr. Jacob Bonney. I'm the analytics consultant here at Stepping Blocks. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to join us for a variety of the sessions we've had throughout StepEx21. But again, thank you for your time this afternoon as we talk a little bit about skills. My colleagues are in this space with us as well. Aaron King is here, our marketing manager. And so should you have any questions or comments, feel free to throw those in the chat and we'll have some opportunity for dialogue as the session goes on. So hopefully this will be a really great kind of engaging conversation around skills in broader terms. If you were able to attend several of our other sessions, we've kind of referenced skills gap and skills gap analyses at the institution level. So hopefully this will give you some great ideas about next steps and what you can do to do a bit of an analysis of where your institution is with skills. So without further ado, I will get started here. And really contextually, as we're talking about the skills gap, one of the things that I wanted to focus on was tangible versus intangible skills. Certainly for folks who are experienced in higher ed, we know that students are learning a lot throughout their experience, both on the tangible skill and intangible skill side. And so we're going to have a couple of reflections kind of about that and dialogue a little bit about that as time goes on. For folks who are familiar with NACE, National Association of Colleges and Employers, there is an annual job outlook update that they conduct. And what I wanted to highlight here and just kind of lay this out as the foundation and groundwork for our session is to understand many of the key attributes that employers are seeking for college graduates. What do they want to see on resumes in order to ensure that students are able to land a job? And, you know, when we think about all employers holistically, obviously there's some soft skills that rise to the top. Ability to work on a team, problem solving, communication, written and verbal, initiative, and leadership. Those are all skills that students are learning in a variety of ways during their college experience. Alternatively, there's some great tangible skills. Analytical and quantitative skills and technical skills also make this kind of top 8 list here of skills that employers are looking for. And so for folks who have leveraged this data before or seen this data, these don't appear to be very different. This is pretty common. Teamwork and problem solving is typically at the top of the list. And so we'll have a little bit of a dialogue around this as we move forward. So thinking about the intangible skills, and I'm certainly happy to go back to that kind of previous slide. What I'd love to kind of reflect on and perhaps get some feedback from the group is, how are those intangible skills implemented or gained throughout the college experience? Does anyone have any examples of how perhaps your institution is specifically focused on some of these intangible skills, problem solving, communication, etc., perhaps inside the classroom and through co-curricular experiences? Any thoughts that folks would like to share?
So as everyone's kind of thinking about that, I'll just make a comment, speaking back to your slide about the NACE competencies. Apologies, there's some yard work going on outside if it's loud. But it's important to use these as a guideline, but to also connect these skills to what you think students will actually learn in the classroom, because it does vary by course, by program. You'll be learning these in different ways, but all of them are important. So maybe if one program of study is heavy on one of these skills, figuring out how to integrate, these other skills into that same curriculum and working with professors and faculty on, how to use these in their classroom.
Absolutely, Aaron. That's a really great point. I do think that students learn these and gain these skills in a variety of ways. Certainly some programs are very technical in nature, but things like group work, team projects, assignments that come in a variety of different forms, that's really helping students think about how to be a contributing member of the workforce, kind of through some of these additional intangible or soft skills. So absolutely, I think that that's a key component. Has anybody implemented any programs or initiatives, perhaps, some of our career services folks or advising folks? Are there any particular initiatives that you've implemented to kind of help highlight the value of these soft or intangible skills for your students? Hearing and seeing none, I do think this is a key component for institutions to think about, not only kind of as Levi mentioned in the previous session, articulating these intangible skills on their resume, but also, how are they valuing these more intangible or soft skills? Clearly, they're valued by employers, and so it's important for the students themselves to think about, what they have gained and how to potentially articulate that or leverage that in a variety of their experiences. This would also include, student organizations. I think that's a key component. There's a lot that students learn from their involvement in a student organization, but perhaps they don't always articulate it well on their resume or through their materials. Any other thoughts about intangible skills before we move forward?
Just a quick comment. I think you touched on this, but it's so important that students not only acquire skills, both tangible and intangible, but they also know how to communicate their experience to prospective employers. So learning how to teach students how to talk about their skills is a huge part of this.
Absolutely. Agreed. Did I see a hand? I think there was a hand that went up and then perhaps went back down. I saw a flash on my second monitor here.
Hi, I'd raise my hand. My name is LaTanya, Career Services, and I was just going to agree and just kind of piggyback on what you're saying about the co-curricular experience and how it seems that students just don't know how to articulate. So they know they work somewhere. They know that they report to someone when they get there. They know that, if they're a server at a restaurant or a bartender or whatever they're doing, they know they work in tandem with someone, but having them communicate that they do that is kind of like the back thought. You have to talk them to that point. And so just at the University of Memphis and throughout my time in higher ed, it's always, there are organizations, whether they are volunteering for community service projects, whether they are working with Greek organizations. There's a number of ways that they can also contribute to these soft skills, but it's just, again, bringing it to the forefront in a way that they can articulate that they're doing so. That's the biggest challenge.
Absolutely. And I think I would add to that, students don't know what they don't know, right? And so if they don't know that those are key components that employers are looking for, they're perhaps focused on the other things that they think employers are focused on, but yeah, absolutely helpful, as you said, to help educate students on those pieces. Thank you for sharing. Any additional thoughts or strategies? Otherwise, we can move on to tangible skills.
I am curious, because it's been mentioned a couple of times. Has anyone found a way to teach students to effectively communicate their skills? Maybe through some, additional credentials that you require through career services or student success. Just curious if anyone's found anything that's worked for their students. Maybe as folks think about that question, we can just carry through. And then feel free to raise your hand at any time and we'll unmute your mic.
Absolutely. I will say something that I've done with the student leaders that I have supervised over the years is asking them to specifically put a line on their resume for that student leadership experience, if it's not there already. And then as I'm helping them review their resume, think about how to expand that. So I think it could be as simple as helping put the word out to student organizations that we should at least have a basic version of what it means to be a member of this Greek organization or this volunteer organization. So thinking about tangible skills, What are some ways perhaps that students are gaining tangible skills? And as we talked about the NACE report, certainly that was technical skills, but also those, sort of analytical and quantitative skills. This may on the surface seem to be something that is more easily articulatable for students. Perhaps, depending on major, students may struggle to identify, many of these same kind of more tangible skills. So I'd love to just open it up to dialogue or discussion around perhaps what you've seen or experienced when it comes to, articulating the tangible skills on resumes or to employers, both inside and outside the classroom.
So I can just share a quick story here. So last summer we sat down with Dr. Angela Christie and Catherine Niner, who's the Director of Career Services at Georgia State, just a couple months after everything shut down from COVID. And one of the things we talked about was future flexibility, which you may have heard me say this week already, but I just think it's so applicable to everything that, institutions are trying to do right now. But one of their goals is, one, to create a future flexible workforce, but also they want their students to be able to see a variety of job postings across a variety of fields and be able to translate the skills that they've earned into these other jobs. So it's important, it's important for students to know that they may be in one major, but especially, with COVID and the pandemic, things change so much. Employer demand has changed, and we're still not really sure exactly what that looks like. So it's important, one, for students to be able to communicate their skills, but also to be able to see themselves outside of maybe the box that they put themselves in. So hopefully that makes sense the way I described it.
Yeah, Erin, I completely agree with you. And I think a key component there, I hate to repeat myself, but students may not know what they don't know. What are the gaps in their skill set that an employer is perhaps looking for? And then what are their strategies to gain that skill, right? If it's more on this kind of specific tangible side, is that going to be utilizing the Stepping Block student platform and researching some of those skills and watching some YouTube videos on that area? Is that an additional class that they could take? Is that participating or engaging in high impact practices like undergraduate research or similar strategies that might help the student gain very specific, very tangible skill that would be highly marketable in the future? So absolutely, I think there's a lot of great questions there. Any additional thoughts or feedback on this kind of concept of tangible skills? I'm interested to know if any institutions have specifically done work around, kind of the more tangible skill development for either specific programs or students broadly. Is that something that's been, kind of at the forefront of your work? Perhaps we can continue to think about that. I'll keep rolling here, and if you have thoughts, please feel free to share.
Dr. Bonnie, I'll just add also, yeah. So, I alluded to the fact that things have changed so much and employer demand has changed so much. We know that one way to keep up with these current skills and to see what's trending is to use the student platform and to use graduate outcomes in your dashboards to find out, what new skills are your graduates reporting. So another question I'm curious about is what other ways have you found to find those new and trending skills that you need to incorporate into your curriculum? If any, maybe that's part of the reason for the gap.
Yeah, and that's a great segue. One of the things I was going to highlight was exploring skills using our graduate outcomes tool, and Levi, our CTO, gave us a great overview of that in the previous session if you were able to attend, or I know we touched on that during the masterclass sessions as well. But certainly there is a very interesting process here around, what are the most common skills, what are the most relevant skills, and what skills are leading to the highest salary dollars for your students. and then helping identify, perhaps ways to articulate those skills either to your students or to your, deans and department leads who might be able to impact incorporating those into the curriculum. Any thoughts here? Additional thoughts on exploring skills? Really what I wanted to kind of focus on, for the remainder of our time is perhaps looking for strategies to find balance between these sort of competing priorities of tangible and intangible skills. So I wonder, is this an experience folks have had? Do you see this as competing priorities, or are these complementary? Certainly employers are looking for students to graduate with both tangible and intangible skills. And so perhaps what are some strategies that you've implemented to connect students to resources, or any other barriers that you might have experienced throughout this conversation?
Well, I'll start here, and this is let me gather my thoughts here. It's almost like when you look around the country and you're asking students for that information post-graduation, but it's like no one has an answer on how they're going to track it. So if you ask the question, well, how are you keeping up with students? Everyone's like, well, students are self-reporting that information, and then there's so many barriers that go with that, as far as the human resources issues, that the information may be past information because the student may no longer have that job or whatever. So I think with this concept of, helping students to articulate the skills that they are doing every day, people are quiet because no one really has a defined solution to doing that. I think employers are really good at stressing which skills they're looking for, but they don't really offer solutions to how we can help those students to develop, like LaTonya mentioned earlier. Yes, a student may be working at customer service or working with other people, but they don't know how to articulate that in their language in an interview or et cetera. And some of like here, what are some of the barriers that we experience related to skill development? Well, outside of role playing with those students on how to practice that language, encouraging them to practice with, students, coworkers, family, whatever. What are other methods to doing that? Like, I think someone else mentioned, you have the student organizations that are on campus and all of the things you're doing, fundraising, you're working with other people, you have different objectives in the community, volunteering, et cetera. Okay, well, aside from doing the physical work, how do we practice and help people learn how to say what they're doing in an interview?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a key component. We talked earlier in the week about, just the importance of helping students find their way to, career resources. And again, in my time in higher ed, I often, tried to pull the curtain back a little bit for students and say, hey, you're learning at every moment of every day, whether it's, the residence hall you live in and learning to live and interact with other people and be a contributing member of your community, to the classroom experience, to those co-curriculars. But certainly I think you're right. We have to get, in front of students to be able to do that. And so that's where, I think differing and unique strategies to connect with students, like we were talking about in the engaging students session yesterday, is also a really important part. How do we articulate this information or get some of our tools in the hands of students so that they can practice this a little bit and walk this path, if they may be experiencing that.
I also wonder if tapping into your existing employer relationships and using them as consultants in a way with your students, that's a little more manual work. But, instead of keeping it on campus, you have the student working before the interview, before the job, talking to real employers who are doing the hiring, or maybe the HR, the HR department, the recruiters of that, of that company or industry, what are they looking for, and how to make that connection, based on what they're learning in the classroom.
I think another thing to also consider when I read when it says what barriers do you experience related to skills development, I think as much as we want to package all things career readiness, there is a small element that we have to consider, and that's real life. Some students struggle and they have a lot of things to worry about, whether they are raising children, taking care of family members, whether food insecurity is a real thing, homelessness is even a thing. And so I think that we have to package whatever it is that we're going to offer students in a way that makes it relevant, student facing, to meet their needs, almost meeting them where they are. Yesterday, a student commented about, during the panel, I remember he said he was thankful that the Career Center there at his school had offered online resources because in the wake of COVID, because he didn't have to physically go, right? And so finding a way to find the things that matter to students, because the days are over for thinking that students will gravitate to your career center just because they should, right? I think those days are over. And so creating a real grassroots approach to figuring out what they need and then getting the information in front of them in a way that matters to them. Because job placement is important. But again, the challenge is people are struggling and they have a lot of things on their plate. And so they may not have Wi-Fi. I mean, there are a lot, they might not even have a laptop. And so figuring out ways to be of service to human needs. And I think once people see that you care about their human needs, you can then segue into this career conversation about what's important and just what the facts are and how you can help them build the career that they need or that they would like to, that they'd like to lock into.
Yeah, that's incredibly well said. And that sort of holistic approach to student success is such a key piece. That's where there's great opportunities to build and foster relationships kind of across campus to ensure that you're able to, help students when they share some of those concerns, whatever it might be, because you're absolutely right. I've seen some neat programs at institutions around wardrobe, students not having, the quote unquote professional or proper attire for job interviewing. And so what can we do to, sort of serve those students in those needs as well? They may have all the language and all the knowledge, but struggle to, kind of meet the dress expectations that certain employers might have. So absolutely, I think that's a really critical component. So thank you very much for sharing.